Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grumman Pilots YouTube channel. And today we found some video from 2008 of Bob Stewart talking at Burlington, Iowa. So nice to hear his voice again, and if you stick around to the very end, you'll get to hear Ken Blackman asking Bob Stewart some questions about cooling. So ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this little foray into the past. We hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. So we would like to ask you please subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the notify to stay current with our content.
It has reached the allotted hour of 1:35, and since we had previous convention activities that got truncated for lack of time, we're not going to wait for anybody else who may be slow to ride. I'd like to begin by welcoming everybody to Burlington, and I'd like to say that we weren't sure a couple of weeks ago exactly what was going to happen with the closure of the the Highway 34 bridge, and some of the satellite photos showing the extensive flooding. And last night, our work crew that was in the motel with us was talking about going out to breach some levees today so that the water could drain back into the river. I'm not exactly sure how that works, that it was higher on the outside of the levee than on the riverside, but that was their job this morning. But in any case, we're glad that the folks who made it have made it. And I'm going to have to put somebody in charge of pressing the button over here so we can move on. We started off this process with the intent of doing a maintenance seminar, and things got fouled up, and somebody else got the job. It's probably Andrew. You know?
Yeah, I think it just looks like your desktop there. Go to the bottom. Try in.
There you go. All right, we're going to talk today about the top 10 reasons that Mike Babin's airplane may be faster than yours in the air race, which was held this morning. And this is it is a maintenance-related thing we're going to talk about. Mike has a very nice 76 Cheetah that we recently converted to Tiger configuration with a new spar and a factory new engine that he purchased on eBay from True Flight. It was a leftover from Tiger's stock. And they decided that since they weren't able to begin production immediately, having to build a building and go through all the FAA hoops and paperwork, that it was better to go ahead and dispose of the items that were actually had the clock running. Lycoming sells new engines, and they expect that 2 years after it's produced and leaves the factory that they're going to be in service. And if not, the warranty starts running at that point. So with a matter of several months of the 2-year warranty still being left on the engine, they decided they would go ahead and sell the engine separately. And as I understand, Graham has one in his airplane now, and Mike Babin has the other. Like I said, we converted Mike's from a 76 Cheetah to the Tiger configuration with the Tiger spar and the Tiger engine prop, motor mount, and all the rest of the little pieces that you have to have. Most of the parts came from Fletch Air, although Mike was able to come up with a really good deal on a center spar from Air Salvage of Dallas out of the 91 Tiger that someone had run out of fuel and landed 5 miles short of the Texarkana airport. So we were very sorry to see the 1,400-hour airplane went down, but that was the donor. Mike has won consistently out of the last, 6 years or whatever, the air race. He's won 5, and the other year he didn't show up because he was scheduling with FedEx. So he was the person to beat in the Cheetah class. And the shout went up this spring when we announced we were going to convert him to a Tiger. Hey, well, maybe somebody else can win the Cheetah class this year. So I'm assuming that happened today, and Stu Morris will have the results and let us know how that went. But anyway, so because you can see the condensation here around Mike's airplane as he breaks the sound barrier. Go ahead. We're going to do the top 10 lists like Dave Letterman. And one of the things that people underestimate is the amount of drag reduction you can have by cleaning properly your airplane, washing, waxing, removing the bugs, keeping the paint in good shape. The air floating around the airplane would like to be in smooth layers, like sheets of paper in a reed. And as the airplane comes through, it disturbs those layers, and it transitions from that smooth laminar flow into what we call turbulent flow. It doesn't happen right away, but anything that's sticking out from the fuselage, from the wings, whatever, tends to disturb that air sooner. So by transitioning from laminar flow to turbulent flow at an earlier point on the airframe, you get additional drag. And it's good for as much as 10% difference in drag reduction. And because we're talking about a 3D form here, the airplane is in 3 dimensions. It's not a flat piece. That scales out to be approximately 7% overall. So you have chips in your paint, bugs, dents, dirt, antennas too, that's true, yeah. Anything that breaks the smooth contours of the airplane tends to cause the air to trip and become turbulent, and that then generates drag. But by having the surfaces that we have smooth and clean and waxed, then the air slides more easily over and transitions to turbulent later in the flow, thereby gaining you a little less drag overall. That's great.
Translate 7% into knots.
Well, I guess you can take your power calculations to determine how much faster you go and see what you can do with 7% more horsepower. Because we work against the cube functions, that's not a lot of knots, but at 135, 140 knots, the Tiger ought to be able to run. 7% would be measurable, probably on your airspeed indicator is something you can physically see, not just calculate it out to the decimal places at the end of the flight. Yes, sir.
You're saying, obviously, it gets more turbulent the further back you go. So
And nothing you can do to...
the payback is the further forward you can clean up.
Right, you see, as the air flows over the wing, for instance, and gets to just about the maximum thickness point or slightly after that, it's going to break loose from the laminar flow and turn turbulent. However, if you've got bugs and dirt things on the leading edge, it's going to trip it earlier. And that means that section from maybe a few inches up the leading edge to the maximum thickness point over the spar is going to be turbulent, not just the last 50 to 60% of the wing. So you'll lose that. That's why it's 10% and not some huge number. Like I said, it's just a matter of properly cleaning the airplane. I know a lot of people, when I do inspections and repairs and whatever, do a beautiful job of cleaning the top of the airplane. The bottom of the airplane looks like it has crud on it that's been on there for decades. And the bottom slides through the air as well. And the other area that is probably the biggest bite that you can see is in cooling draft. And this is probably one of the worst areas in terms of, now that the airplanes are so old, and the fleet is at least 30 years old for everybody because the airplanes were last produced in 79 for the 70s series, and some of them this year are now turning 40s. We have Roscoe with his oldest Grumman serial number 2 that was produced in summer of 68. The baffles. And why are the baffles bad? It's because people didn't know what to do with it. They took the little hard original strips off and they put that gosh awful orange stuff, pop ribbon all over the place. And who did this? Well, it was the Cessna mechanics. They weren't Grumman mechanics. They didn't perhaps see what the original factory stuff looked like. And then the next guy that came along when the engine was overhauled, so this stuff was in terrible shape, ripped it all off, hammered on the metal, patched some cracks, put the pieces back on, and then began stretching even more of that awful orange, thick, non-reinforced baffle material all over. And just this morning when we were working on Pat Gunner's Cheetah, we were cleaning up and cutting and notching some of the baffle material because we had the prop off at the nose bowl around. We just installed the Skytech alternator. And with the prop off, you could look down in the nose bowl and see all these waves and humps in the baffle strip because it hadn't been properly cut and fit. Even if it was of the right material, it wasn't properly cut. There should be short sections such that it can bend and follow the contour of the lower cowling and the nose bowl. Well, he had these great big lumps and waves in it. And of course, every one of those was just a place for the air to run under the baffles. Now, what that means is he paid the price in drag for bringing the air in through the scoops in the front and decelerating it. And then he wasted it because it went out through those holes without going through the fins of the engine. And that is two drawbacks. One is, of course, it didn't get the cooling, and it also increases the pressure on the hot side of the cooling system below the engine. That means you have less pressure differential from above the engine to below the engine to drive the cold air through the fins. This is a picture we borrowed from Gary Vogt on the right-hand side. He was doing some testing on the cowl to show the airflow, because some of you may know Gary has a new cowl he's working on. This composite has sort of oval inlets that are actually much smaller than the stock inlets on Tiger. I mentioned here the proper inlet to outlet ratio, if you have everything optimized, is about, for our speed of airplanes, about 1 to 3. In other words, the inlet area should be 1/3 the size of the outlet area. Now, the cooling theory has come a long way since the 60s, when most of this that we have today was finalized. If you look at the difference between the early AA1 series and then the later Cheetahs and Tigers, you see they took a step away from that flat nose with some differences in inlets, but the area ratio of the inlet and outlets are still pretty much about two inlet areas to one outlet. Now, I don't know about you, but if you lay out a piece of rope and you try and push that rope, it doesn't push very well. But if you get on the other end and pull, well, you can just yank the heck out of it and it'll move right along. And that's what we have to do with the cooling system. Is the only way we can do this is because we cannot reach sonic and transonic velocities. We can't push the air through so much as we suck it through from the bottom. And by lowering the pressure below, we allow the pressure above to flow through the cylinder fin. So anywhere you've got a leak, be it around holes, have a different starter, and it doesn't fit the metal baffling, you have to come up with some kind of a rubber or metal plate to fit around the starter. Any place where your spark plug wires come through the baffles in the back, whatever that are holes in the metal, those need to be minimized as much as possible and well sealed. And then there's the rubber or flexible baffle strip that has to be contoured to match the top of the cowl and around the nose bolt effectively. And we get on the Grumman gang all the time, people complaining that my Tiger, my Cheetah, my whatever won't cool. I have CHTs in the 420, 450 range, and the baffling, but we've done everything to the baffle. It's not that I have an engine problem. Well, I've seen a number of these airplanes in person, and I can tell you that to a single one, they were virtually all baffle problems. And it has to do with the area in the nose bolt, around the front. It's particularly difficult on the Cheetah because of that NACA inlet. There is some pretty tricky fitting of the flexible strips to go in that area. But the Tigers also have the problem when they don't put the proper pieces in, don't cut them in short segments where they can lay along the contour. Because if you look at that fiberglass nose bolt, that's a compound curve. And you can't expect a flat piece of material to lay against that without ripples. So you have to cut it in sections and let it sort of float. And the air pressure inside the nose bolt will push it down to seal. In any case, this morning on Pat Leonard's airplane, we were able to graphically demonstrate that to the half dozen people who were standing around. Once we put the nose bolt up, we were able to look in through the hole where the propeller and spinner normally go and say, see that? And I got out my electronic horoscope, and we were able to lay it down in there and show the path that the air could take behind the landing light. There was a big hump and several other places. So we cut and trimmed and helped to lay it down. But on Gary's picture here, if you look real close, you'll see some of those little dots. What that is fluorescent paint or dye in oil. You put those little dots on and they went out and flew the airplane. And you'll notice that a lot of them were streamed into the inlet, but there's some of them, the tails are coming out. And you think, that how could that possibly be? Well, that has to do with the inlet and outlet ratios and the fact that the air went in, didn't have any place to go, and it turned around and came back out. There's actually air coming out of the inlet as it's very turbulent flow right there because the outlet area was diminished or never sufficiently large in the first place. The early model Travelers and the Cheetahs and Tigers up through 75 and 6 had fiberglass ramps on the air outlet. And I've seen an awful lot of them where the fiberglass has been hot over the years. It sags. We already had not enough air outlet area to begin with, and as that fiberglass sags, you're further lowering the amount of area that you have to let the air out. And the same thing happens with the metal ramps. They crack, they break, people do patches and whatever, and they reduce the area. And on the next slide, you flip on over, we see all kind of amazing repairs to the bottom of the cowls where they crack. And what happens is it begins to close up the area because the bottom of the cowl is no longer smooth and rounded in that area. It becomes flat or even pushed up into the ramp. And that closes down the exit area. Yes, sir?
Just a quick question. Has anything or anyone done any experimenting with making the outlet ramps larger?
Oh, yes. There are larger outlet ramps on most of the high output engine airplanes. Fred Prokaskis, Peter Ottens, Scott Jernigan's Hyper Cheetah, and we incorporated that into several cowl repairs. Basically what you've got is a 9-inch wide by 3-inch high opening in the stock outlet. And the openings have been widened to 10 inches wide by 4 inches high on the 200 horsepower cheetah conversion. And I'm not sure exactly what Fred's and some of the other measurements were. Ken, are you familiar with any of those 6-cylinder Tigers that got converted up in your neighborhood?
I wasn't directly involved in doing those. They're larger. We have a template that we make up those things and roll the top very similar, roll them out, and we're using the same footprint. We're opening them up about 1.5 inches and then putting a roll on the top. And we're dropping cylinder head temperatures an average about 40 degrees across the board. Oil temperature about 20 to 25 by just doing this on Tigers and
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. A little blast from the past of 13 or 14 years ago from 2008, and Bob Stewart talking during one of his normal presentations. Throwing a little picture here of Speedy and Smokey on the back porch of the house up in Moraine. Again, we hope you found all this information from Bob Stewart. It was nice hearing Ken asking questions at the end. And again, we hope you found all this useful and informative. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day flying your Grumman. Freckles, our cat supervisor, and we'd like to introduce the new cats to you. We have Hopscotch there on the left. The other small ginger is Tarzan. He came with that name, and his sister will be popping up in just a second, and her name is Sweet Pea. These are the new cats that we've adopted into our home. It's going to be a nice little family, and we're having a ball. Thanks for watching.